Hello everyone, I'm making this video to highlight why I bought this Hearthstone GM60 wood stove and my impression after using it for 2 months. I first started using this stove in the beginning of November of 2021, which is just over 2 months ago. So far, I am really enjoying this wood stove. I decided to purchase this stove out of hundreds of great options for several reasons. This stove is made of cast iron with soapstone as a fire brick liner. This makes the heat retention excellent on the stove. The stove also meets all of the EPA criteria for high efficiency, which was appealing for the tax credit, longer burn times, and environmental friendliness. Though I don't think you can buy a non-EPA stove anymore. Based on my research, Hearthstone seems to be a reputable, quality manufacturer that backs its product. I like the single-piece construction where the sides are integrated into the legs. I also like that it's a catalytic stove with a lever to engage the catalyst so you can keep it as a reburner only when getting the fire started. The design of this stove also complemented the space it was being installed in. It is tough to find a modern-looking stove that is still functional. Hearthstone also has some of the closest clearances of any of the manufacturers, and ember protection only for the floor. No R value required. With the rear blower installed, you can get as close to 5 inches from the rear wall. I had considered going with a Hearthstone Heritage, but ultimately decided against it as I preferred the steel look over the exposed soapstone. Additionally, I wanted to be able to boil water in an emergency or cook on the stove if the power is out. The firebox size on the Green Mountain also seemed to be generous for a mid-sized stove. Vermont Castings and Blaze King came highly recommended, but I didn't like the style of the models available. Jodel, Wittes, and Stuve had nice-looking modern stoves, but they fell short in performance and firebox size. I will start off with my complaints about the stove. Due to this being a catalytic stove, and I am assuming having the minimum chimney height doesn't help, there was definitely a learning curve with starting a fire compared to a simple wood stove I used frequently growing up. You can't just throw in some newspaper, cardboard, and wood and light it and be done. This stove you must take special care to have high quality wood and good kindling. You also must be conscious of not smothering the fire when it is starting by allowing the heavier logs to collapse on the smaller kindling. I usually start a fire by employing a combination of traditional fire starting along with top-down burn fire starting. Until the stove and flue are nice and hot and in optimal catalytic temperature, it is difficult to open the front door without getting smoke in the house. Unless the wood is burning hot and clean, you are pretty much always going to get smoke in your house when the door is opened. The baffle above the firebox constantly falls down or shifts if you so much as touch it. Care must always be taken to not touch the baffle and make sure it is evenly spread across the fire bricks on either side. This, to me, is the biggest day-to-day functionality flaw in the wood stove. You also must keep the front door open for a while to provide enough air for the fire to catch adequately before you can close the door and let the fire continue to burn. I also wish the stove had a side-load door. I wish it had an ash pan. Though the stove burns so efficiently you can go long periods without cleaning out the ash, so long as you run it hot every few days to burn up the unburnt bits at the bottom of the stove. You must also do this to keep the glass clean. When you let the stove burn out, eventually it comes out of catalytic range. When you go to use the stove again and you re-enter catalytic range, the catalyst can sometimes seem plugged when it is engaged, smothering your fire. The solution I have found is to wait until the stove is hotter prior to re-engaging the catalyst. This seems to burn off whatever was plugging up the catalyst. The fan blower seems to work okay, but it is extremely noisy and the non-constant sound demonstrated in my installation video can take some getting used to. Despite all of these comments, I really do love the stove. Some positive notes, of course, are the long burn times. If you have good quality wood and the firebox is full, you can easily achieve all-night burns. You just must first learn the characteristics of the stove in your environment with the wood you are burning. There is some trial and error for where to set the air control and how to situate the logs. Once the stove is in the catalytic range, it seems to be unstoppable. If you let the stove creep too low below the catalytic range, it will take some finesse to restart the stove. You may have to stoke the coals and leave the door open to allow the fresh logs to catch when added. Otherwise, they may just smolder and smoke, which isn't ideal for keeping your chimney and stove clean and running efficiently. All the logs I have thrown at this stove have fit in the firebox. Even weirdly shaped and extra long logs can usually be contorted to fit into the firebox. Just make sure you have room first, of course. I find it is helpful to wear some welding gloves and have a good fire poker handy to situate the logs exactly as you want them. I always take care to make sure that they don't fall on the glass mid-burn, though I don't think there is any issue if this happens. As far as heat output, it has no trouble holding a 1,400 square foot ranch house with 12-foot cathedral ceilings at 80 degrees Fahrenheit in the area surrounding the wood stove. The stove is situated on one side of the house. It will maintain 65 degree Fahrenheit temperatures on the other side of the house, down to about 20 degree Fahrenheit outdoor ambient temperatures. When it creeps down to 0 degrees Fahrenheit outdoors, the wood stove supplements the oil-fired hydronic boiler. If the wood stove was in more of a central location or installed in the basement, I would have no doubt it would heat the entire house. I also have special circumstances where there are 12-foot cathedral ceilings and tons of windows. The house it is installed in is modern construction built in 1980. There is R15 fiberglass insulation in the walls, R21 fiberglass insulation in the cathedral ceiling, and double bats of R38 fiberglass insulation in the rest of the ceilings. The climate this stove is installed in is moderate. We see temperatures as low as -10 degrees Fahrenheit in the winter, but it rarely gets that cold. So far, I have had this stove performing well in 0 degree Fahrenheit ambient outdoor temperatures. When the outdoor air is colder, the stove must be kept hotter. I see a real difference in circulation when the fan is on. It is worth noting you can get to catalytic range faster with the fan off. The cost breakdown for installation is as follows. The wood stove and blower cost $3,582. The chimney and stovepipe connector cost $1,307. The 48 by 48 inch Ember King powder-coated steel hearth pad cost $620. New York tax was another $482, bringing the total cost to $5,991. I saved on installation because I installed it myself, following all the building codes and manufacturer installation setback requirements. The year of install was 2021, so there is a 26% EPA tax credit because the stove is above 75% efficiency. This should yield a tax credit of $1,557. This is calculated not just on the stove, but on the total cost of installation based on my understanding of the federal tax credit. To conclude, I definitely do recommend this wood stove. If you are looking for a stove that has nice aesthetics and functionality. If you are looking for a wood stove primarily for heat and design and aesthetics are less important, I would look to another brand that has a bigger firebox or top load firebox, along with a pedestal so you don't need to kneel down to reload the fireplace. I also would recommend double checking you have the required chimney height. A chimney height that is higher within the spec will achieve better draft and allow the stove to perform at its best. This is a well-made stove that I believe would suit any home. The design, in my opinion, is timeless and modern, yet functional enough it can easily produce excellent heat. The efficiency is excellent and right up to snuff with other EPA stoves. Please check out my other videos if you like this video. Why not give it a thumbs up? Leave me a comment below if you have the same stove or are thinking about getting one. Thanks for watching.